to record the session today. So as long as we have your email address filled out, we will email you a copy of the presentation. So if someone who wasn't here wants to see it, you can forward that to them, and it'll be recorded. It may either be today's session or yesterday's session, depending upon which one has less heckling. My name is John Reardon with Harvest Technology Group. The subject is integrated document management for SunGard. This session and all the vendor sessions are really designed to be appetizers. This is just a quick overview of what our technology does. If you see something you like, either email us or come see us at the booth. I'll be there for about an hour after the session, and we'll be more than happy to expand upon what you've seen today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with document management. And really, document management integrated with SunGard consists of three things in our view. It's really 3.5 things, but we'll talk about the half in just a minute. The first thing is the ability to retrieve documents, both from within any of your SunGard applications. I'm going to show you this in just a second, as well as from our search interface. The second is the ability to capture content from any source. So you have your common sources, which would be paper that you've been receiving. You may have forms that parents are turning in, or you may be receiving a lot of information, like most school districts now are, from email. So how do I quickly capture that information and categorize it for storage? And finally, what do I do with those documents once they're received? Right? How do I route them throughout the organization using some sort of following our rules in a measured process? And that's what workflow is. Finally, I'll point out quickly that I know that every district here is not not as fortunate to have SunGard on both sides for student and finance. The integrations you'll see, to the most part, will work with other applications, not just SunGard applications. All right, so with that being said, we're going to start with a quick overview of the functionality, and I'm going to start with document retrieval. So how do I get access to information once it's already inside Content 360? And the first is using our integration with the major SunGard products, so eSchool Plus, Business Plus, and Finance Plus. We have an integration button on the upper right corner of the screen. When you click that button, we read, if you will, the information on that screen and then allow you to retrieve documents based upon what we see there. So in this example, we're going to show you Finance Plus. We'll switch over to Business Plus, and I'm going to click the button and retrieve a document related to that employee. Okay, so that integration happens it's about a 5 to 6 minute setup on each screen you want to be able to retrieve documents from, but we can retrieve individual documents or we can retrieve groups of documents, which I'll show in just a second. So once I have the document presented, I can annotate it, I can add sticky notes to the document, I can highlight information on the document, and I can even redact information if necessary. Okay, so if this was something I was serving up for an open records request, I could redact that information. As I mentioned earlier, we'll show a quick retrieval from eSchool Plus. Again, this time we're going to be retrieving a group of documents, not individual documents, and these are all related to the student ID that was on the screen before. So any questions about document retrieval? And one final retrieval I'll show is from Teacher Access Center. So I click on a student drawer and then the retrieval button, and we're seeing documents related to that individual student. Okay.
So who's retrieving? I do have a question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So who's retrieving these documents? Is it the teacher that's retrieving?
In the Teacher Access Center, absolutely, it's the teachers.
But secretaries, we're also talking about the documents that they might be sending to their school.
Anyone who has access to those screens inside SunGard can have the ability to access documents. But depending upon who you're authenticated as, you can limit which views which documents you have access to once they retrieve from there.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Now that works very well, and that's how a lot of our users are accessing documents, just by interfacing with the SunGard applications. But in many cases, they want to retrieve a range of documents, or you want to see information such as show me all the vendor invoices from this vendor for the month of March. So those are broad-based searches happen inside of our search web part. In this example, I'll say, okay, I'm going to retrieve vendor invoices starting with the letter B. So you can use all Boolean type logic, wildcards greater than, less than, to be able to retrieve your information. So when I click the search button, I'm going to get a list of all vendor invoices, and for a bunch of different suppliers. Okay. And once again, I can just click on the view button to retrieve the document itself.
It looked like you could also put in a date range to limit it, even to over time.
Yeah, date ranges, dollar ranges, greater than, less than, really anything like that. You choose to limit it. And I'll show you again in this example. I've shown a retrieval list of all content, but I've limited it by the student first name, for example. Yes, so great questions. Any other questions about document retrieval? Okay, fantastic. All right, let's take a look then at document capture, and I'm going to kind of blow through this slide fairly quickly. Anything that's being generated out of your SunGard applications can automatically be captured into Content 360 and indexed at the point of print. So as soon as you hit the print button, those documents are dropped into a monitored directory. Content 360 is taking a look on your network for the presence of those documents. Once it sees them, it will automatically ingest them and index them for you. Okay, without any, so we don't do any printing and then scanning of documents. Okay. Now, documents that are brought in through other applications. So I've received a fax, I've got a mail that's being dropped off, so I've got a physical piece of paper, or I've got emails or things of that nature. Those documents can also use the monitored directory concept, but in this case, they're going to require some level of automated indexing or manual processing. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Questions? Okay, fantastic. So in this example, I've got an employee emergency medical form. This is maybe something that was handed in to me. I've walked down to the departmental multifunction device, dropped it on the scanner, keyed in my code. I've gone back to my desk, and now I'm going to index this document. All right, I'm going to provide the metadata, if you will, to be able to retrieve this document at a later date. So but the first thing I'll do is just select the content type, and then I'm going to key in the employee ID. Now, a lot of this information, so first name, last name, employee ID, address, city, state, and zip, that information resides in my SunGard applications. So we want to be able to use that information to quickly index this document. So I'll key in the employee ID in this example, click auto populate, and all of the additional index values have been retrieved from Business Plus or Finance Plus. Now, if this was a student document, I would type in the student ID in most cases. That will give me my index information. If this were an accounts payable document, we typically use purchase order number to retrieve that information, to index the document. Okay? And this document is then automatically then related to all of Henry Radcliffe's other documents in the system. It becomes part of his employee personnel file. Now, we do have automated methods of capturing information. Human resources documents, there's not a lot of applicability because a lot of those have handwritten information on them. Finance documents, a lot of times contain, especially AP vendor invoices, contain machine print. Those can automatically be OCR'd, so we'll go into the document, read that information, and extract it in a usable format for Content 360. We can do OCR, IMR, so we can do some constrained writing, unconstrained writing where you're just writing information and reading it. You only get about a 75% read rate, which is, it makes it really iffy whether or not it's worthwhile to take on that challenge. OMRs, that's check boxes. We can detect if the document's been signed or not, and we can even do line item detail extraction. Again, really valuable in an accounts payable environment where I want to not only capture the invoice, but I want Content 360 to read the information, the quantity, item description, and total off of those each individual lines, and we can use that to inject it into SunGard, Finance Plus, or Business Plus. So in that instance, I can almost take human interaction out of my accounts payable vendor invoice capture process.
PDF fillable forms?
Absolutely. PDF fillable forms, we'll talk about it in 1 minute. Great question. Okay, so in any case, when we do perform OCR, we can validate the information against what I have in SunGard. So I can do an automatic check to see if what I retrieved off the vendor invoice matches with what's in the purchase order, and then flag those for exception if I run into something that I'm not expecting. So I'm going to show you a quick example of what this looks like from a human resources perspective. This is from a student perspective. So this is a birth certificate that may have been submitted. It is human resources along with an application. In this example, we've got a character that is highlighted in a field highlighted in red and a character highlighted in yellow. That means that that document did not, or that character did not match our read threshold. So we're not sure what it is. I can click on that, and it will bring me to the actual field that it read, showing that okay, it read it as a 5, but it's actually an S. We can correct that information, and then use auto-populate to determine which employee or which field this is associated with. When I do that, we can then use auto-populate to fill in the rest of the index values. So I'm going through this fairly quickly, understanding though that we're getting a lot of index information on a document that really contains only just a name and a birth date. So even if you don't have all of the index values on an individual document that you want to be able to use but you want to use those index values to be able to retrieve that document later, we can use information in SunGard or in other databases to complete our indexing process. Again, any questions about that? The goal here is obviously to make sure that this information is accurate, but it also is pertinent and relevant to my retrieval objectives. So how am I going to want to see this document later? And oh yeah, by the way, what is the retention schedule for these documents? When do I want to be able to get rid of them in the future? So we asked about PDF forms. HTML or PDF forms work in conjunction with Content 360. We'll start with a PDF form. This is my phenomenal example of humor inside of the document management space. So when I key in a student ID, Mr. Jeffrey Spicoli from Ridgemont High's information automatically populates into the document itself. As I mentioned yesterday, there's not a lot of humor in document management, so I have to kind of do what I can. These documents, this PDF form is created by Adobe. So if you have existing PDF forms, you can use them in conjunction with Content 360. We like PDF forms because inside of Adobe, I can show you this at the booth later, they've got a very, very slick method of taking even a scanned document and converting it into a PDF form. So that it can make the usage or the creation of forms very easy. And it is a full PDF form, so I have the ability to use checkboxes, date ranges, drop-down menus. We're pretty sure he's emotionally disturbed, so we'll check that one. I can sign the document and then go ahead and submit it into Content 360. Once those documents are submitted, and this is common with all PDF forms or even HTML forms as well, they typically kick off some sort of a workflow process. So think about where your documents are after those forms are created, what has to happen next. So inside of Content 360, we have a full workflow engine that allows us to take those documents, route them for approval, and then finally lock them down as part of the employee or the student file. Okay, so those forms are now inside Content 360. They can be set with retention schedules, security, just like any other document. And inside of Content 360, workflow looks like this. So our workflows are generally organized by stages or queues that we call them. So these are the different steps this document is going to take as it routes throughout my organization. So we'll start with the administration building. When I highlight the queue, I see all of the documents that are sitting in there that require my attention. So if I select a different queue, I see a different list of documents based upon where they are in the workflow. And I'll highlight the document itself. That shows me the document. It shows me my routing options. So what decisions can I make on this document? And then it also shows me related documents. So oftentimes you can't make an informed decision based upon the single piece of information. So I want to see, let's see, the student discipline report, and I want to see the medical evaluation before I approve this change of status for the student. I see both of those pieces of information. I decide, okay, well, now my next step is to send it to Noriko, and I'm going to select her name and then forward it to her in the process. So then she would receive an email notification if we configured it that way. Be able to click on a link. It would take her back to her step in the workflow process where she would be able to see her list of work that needs to be performed, and then she could work through it sequentially as well. Now, I don't have to route it to an individual. I can route it to no one. Routing it to no one doesn't make sense, but I can send it. I can limit where it goes next, so then it always goes to the same person, or I can send it to a group of people and they can work on it in kind of a round-robin type approach. One other thing we're doing in the back end, as well as notifications, is that we have timers so we're recording when a document enters each step of the workflow. And if those timers are exceeded, then we can escalate the notifications. So, hey, this document has been in this queue for 48 hours. We need to notify someone else so that action is taken on that document. We don't want anything to go in as kind of a black hole, so to speak. Now, those of you who are Business Plus users, obviously there are workflows built into Business Plus. These are not meant to supplant or replace those workflows necessarily. What they're meant to do is to manage all of the hundreds of other little processes that happen inside your school district that you may have no visibility into, right? And really no ability to control how those processes work inside your school district. Okay, finally, in conjunction with the PDF and HTML forms, we are collecting data on those documents. That data can then be, after it works through the workflow process, or at any step in the workflow process, sent over into Finance Plus, Business Plus, or eSchool Plus. And we just found out this morning that the APIs for Finance Plus and Business Plus are being worked on now. They should be available early part of next year, which means we will have bidirectional capability for sending that information into Business Plus or eFinance Plus. So thinking about this in the larger terms, now I have the ability to collect data that I may not have had a chance to collect before, and then instead of rekeying it into Business Plus or eFinance Plus, I can just use the API to deposit that information. So I think this is a huge advancement. I'm really, really excited SunGard's taking the step to open up the integration engine and some of those other pieces, because now we can, if an employee, if you wanted to automate a leave request, well, let's check into SunGard and see if they have enough days left in their allocation before we even let them submit that form, right? And so we can essentially put most of the decision-making process back on the users as opposed to having it route into an office and then go back and forth via email to correct that data. So we're very excited about this. All right, just two other real quick pieces of functionality. I mentioned a lot of times we get emails. If I right-click on an email, I can import it into Content 360. So we have a quick method of managing that process. And then I want to talk a little bit about how many Finance Plus users do we have in the room? Okay, good, a couple. So we've done a lot of work in Finance Plus along with Klein ISD. So Jenny, Kim, and Will have graciously appeared to sit through this presentation twice. My apologies. I tried to change up the jokes so it wouldn't be entirely.
How long did you stay up last night?
Yeah, right. So we love workflow, right? Workflow is great, but workflow can take a little bit of time to implement and build. I don't want to have to recreate the rules every time. Well, there's a piece inside Finance Plus where we recognize that our users weren't able to scan invoices immediately. So they're having to route the paper, use the paper process, and then scan at the end of the process. And the reason being is that when you key the information into Finance Plus, it's ready for payment. So you would either have to key the information twice, which is fairly painful, or just use the paper. Well, inside Content 360, what we're doing in this process is we're taking this invoice and scanning it in the very beginning. So the first step, as soon as it comes in the mailroom, as close as possible, we want to scan that invoice. We're going to key in and use auto-populate like we showed earlier to get some nominal information about this invoice. And we're going to use two unique fields inside Content 360 to note whether or not the product has been received and whether or not that invoice has been keyed or not. So what now happens is, instead of having to go through and figure out, I've got my paper invoices, has it been received, has it been received, has it been received, okay, yes, then I can process this for payment. We're going to let Content 360 manage that process. So if it's Friday and I'm going to run checks, I'm going to go into Content 360. I'm going to search for all of the invoices that have been received and have not been keyed into the software. So when I click search, I now have that list of basically, which is now represents my work item. The flag for whether or not it was received or partially received is set by Content 360 polling the database inside Finance Plus. All right, so that's a completely automated process. So once I see this list, I'm saying, great, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to complete the keying and indexing process in one step. So this is hard to demonstrate because normally this is a dual monitor environment. So I've got the document on one side and I've got my post accounts payable screen on another monitor. Since I can't do that, it's going to be a little cramped, but hopefully I can show you what we can do here. So here I've got the information that we've already keyed or we've retrieved from Finance Plus in Content 360. Over here, I'm going to key in a control number, and then I'm going to click the integration button. Now, once I click this button, a number of different things are going to happen at the same time. One is this is a bidirectional integration, so we're going to grab the control number from this field, populate it into Content 360. We're going to take the data from Content 360 and populate the fields in the post accounts payable screen inside Finance Plus. We've also simultaneously set the keyed status to this invoice to yes, so it will no longer appear in my list of work to do. Does that make sense? And then I can click approve and then move on to the next step in the process.
But no longer will we have that attachment turn orange in eFinance Plus with our attachment there.
Right, it's exactly right. The documents now live inside Content 360, so they're no longer taking up space in the eFinance Plus database. And instead of retrieving via the attachment button, you go to retrieve from the integration button inside Content 360. Yeah. So Klein has also graciously volunteered to answer any questions about this process. Any?
So what happens to the attachments that are already, like all of our PO copies and all of our check copies that are already in Finance?
Well, actually, right now, we still have the documents going back to eFinance as well.
Oh, do you?
We do. They graciously split our Octio file into two pieces, so it runs through, sends the PDFs back to eFinance, and then goes a second time and dumps it into Content 360. So at some point, I suspect we're going to turn that off, but that would be when my director of accounting says that she's comfortable with turning that functionality off. Yeah.
Do you have your server on site or you cloud?
On site.
So Content 360 is cloud.
Or on-premise or hosted. Yeah, it's up to you.
So you want to hold on to everything right there.
We're kind of good for freaks that way.
We were cloud with eFinance and we had to come back.
Did you?
We chose to come back. Yeah.
I
We
said-
chose to come back. Starting nothing. We decided it was in for us to work fast to be back in house. So,
Any other questions about that process from the Finance Plus users? Okay.
it's pretty slick, you know, our accounts payable, we used to run the tapes, you know, to verify, and that can be done now through Content 360 by searching by the control number. You have a total at the bottom. I am, yeah, see.
Control number.
So that's accurate.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a total at the bottom, so they can compare that to the cash requirement.
That's awesome. Yeah, so we're totally right. So we're totaling that to make sure it matches up with the check register inside of Content 360. So that's your final quality control check, if you will, before you actually have to cut the check.
When you do this, because we have some cashable checks and some EFTs, does it all, can you do them separately in here somehow?
Or in fact,
Well,
That's a
for
good
us,
question.
all of our checks, I mean, they all go in as a content type of a check, but you can tell by the number whether it's an EFT or a voucher or a payable or a regular check.
So, and because we're up against time now, we do have a break next. I don't want to steal your break time, but I will say this. This is an example. This is something that we can do with Content 360 and integration. From a Business Plus side, there's a whole nother level of integrations and things we do there. From a Business Plus perspective, we do a lot with human resources. That's generally where we start. A lot of Business Plus users have complained to us about the database size after using it for X amount of time. What we will do, but there's the Docs Online functionality in conjunction with their AP processes. They've already got a pretty slick workflow built in there. So what we'll do in that instance, a lot of times we will take those documents and migrate them out of finance after about 90 days and put them into the Content 360 database. So the documents will reside long-term in Content 360, short-term inside of Finance Plus. I'm sorry, Business Plus. And one of the other, and Klein, I don't know if you're not 100% unique, but the majority of their invoices are PO based. Is that correct? So a lot of other school districts don't have that. Now, a lot of their invoices are not PO based. Using the HTML forms, this is fairly new. We're now able to capture the coding data on non-PO based invoices, and then using the upload tables inside of Finance Plus or Business Plus, upload that information. So we basically close the loop, if you will, on the AP approval transaction. So your invoices are mostly coded before you're even received because they're coded on the purchase order. If you don't have that functionality, we can provide that via an HTML form or a PDF form, so you can code that information for non-PO based invoices. Okay. Any questions about some of the functionality we mentioned? All right, fantastic. One other quick thing I'll mention that we're moving into or have considered based upon requests from our clients is either online enrollment or online employee registration. So new employees coming on board, think about the first thing they do. They fill out a bunch of forms. Well, guess what we have? A bunch of forms that people can fill out. So we're looking into that. It's something that we have a number of requests for. If there's anyone who wants some more information about that and what we're considering, I'd be more than happy to discuss that with you, either now or in the future. If you'd like to see more information about this, I've got business cards somewhere or at the desk. Just stop by. We'll be happy to schedule an online presentation for you guys at WebEx. Take 30 minutes or so to show to your district. And then we can get more specific about your specific SunGard applications. So other than that, thank you all very much for your attention. We certainly do appreciate it. And I'll be at the booth until around 4. The folks at Klein are around as well. So.